Mr. Secretary, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
You've got a big job. When I went to the website of the department, I was really overwhelmed by the scope and the importance of all the programs that the department administers on behalf of some of the most vulnerable people in Florida. It's a big job that you have, isn't it?
It surely is. I mean, DCF is really the safety net of Florida.
Well, I know talking with you before the show, you personally, and I'm sure a lot of the people who work for you, have to engage in quite a bit of crisis management.
Well, that's right. Unfortunately, when you deal with the people who are most in need in this state, there's crises happening every day in every city in this state. And so, as an organization, we're trying to help those most in need, but, it's an enormous job.
Well, you had a very different kind of life and very different kind of job before you came into this particular job. You were a master consultant, global consultant for Accenture. I was looking at your biography, and you worked in areas strategic planning, human resources, corporate acquisition, sales, and other areas. First of all, has it been a big adjustment for you personally, moving from that kind of life to what you're doing now?
Well, from the perspective of running the enterprise, there's a lot of similarities. Definitely, though, the emotional side of running DCF is something I probably never encountered, and I probably never will encounter again in my life. And so, I treasure the opportunity to get to perform this job, but it is very different than, running a big corporate organization. From my corporate experience, I learned a lot about people management and how do you organize an organization and, how do you motivate people. And a lot of those techniques and skills I've been able to apply here into DCF. And, but from the emotional side, in terms of, the trauma that you see happening in families across the state and trying to address those issues, that is something that you would never see until you're in this seat.
Well, we'll come back and talk about that trauma in some areas, specific areas. But let's talk about kind of some of the skill sets that you developed in your other life. You actually would be called in as an expert in some areas. One of them would be strategic planning, helping an organization work more effectively, more efficiently, et cetera. So about a year ago, you come into this job with its enormous scope, serving nearly 4 million Floridians in a variety of areas. What are some of the efficiencies or inefficiencies you saw almost immediately from your private sector background that you sought to correct to get the ship moving in the right direction?
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, there is a lot of similarities there, and being in the consulting business, where we help companies, organize and redefine how they in essence go to market to solve their business problems. A lot of those skills definitely, are skills I've been able to apply here at DCF. And one of the first questions I asked, and when I was looking at all the different operational tasks that we perform, is, well, what is our overall strategy of sort of how we perform these particular functions? And one of the first things we did is we took a step back and said, let's put an overall strategic plan together in terms of where we want to take this agency over the next 4 years. And so, we went through that process, a very methodical process of going out and talking to community partners, talking to some of those most in need, understanding from other business partners in terms of how we were organized, how we delivered services, and really put an overall strategy together of how we want to improve the efficiency of the agency and also how we want to increase the effectiveness of the agency. Because in DCF, just like in many government programs, we will never have the money to solve all the needs. And so we have to be very pragmatic and smart about how we use taxpayers' dollars.
I saw in a mission statement on the website the use of the word customers, okay? I think in the old medical model, you might use the word client for a lot of the right. Recipients of the services. You're a business person. You still talk in business terms, right? But that doesn't mean you don't have compassion.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
But another thing that came out from your bio was that you spent 14 years, you and your wife, on the board of the Florida Baptist Children's Home. And that influenced you greatly and deeply in terms of your involvement in some similar programs and overseeing them from a volunteer standpoint, some similar programs that you're currently overseeing in a public agency. What was important about that experience for you, and what does it say to you that you want to share with other people in business?
Well, sure. We spent a lot of time helping individual children in a group home environment, and we invested in individual girls who were in foster care. I have 3 daughters of my own, so we have a lot of experience in dealing with girls at our house. But through that experience, I felt like I was really on the front line. I saw a lot of the trauma that these individual girls have gone through, how complicated it is to help someone who has been separated from their family, who've been basically told, you're going to have to figure out how to make it on your own, and how important people like us were to those girls in terms of helping them sort of steer their life in a different direction. And we sure didn't solve all the problems, but it gave me the platform. I saw what we did for those individual situations, and it really wanted me to have the opportunity to play a bigger role, saying if we could do this, what else could we do in a larger scene, and that's what we tried to accomplish here now as we've taken on the broader DCF role. Is one of the things that we're really trying to push is getting more business people, more individual citizens in the community involved in people's lives who need help. And it changed my life. It changed my wife's life in terms of engaging. And quite frankly, it was probably one of the best things we've ever done, other than having our own children and getting the opportunity to raise them, is to invest in these other girls' lives. And so one of the things we're trying to do is create the atmosphere, create the opportunity for other people to experience that opportunity to invest in other people's lives.
Well, I assume in your other job, just the job you had before this one, just looking at all the activities you were involved in, you were pretty busy, right?
Oh, yes.
And you had to be away from home a lot. How did you find the time, you and your wife, to be involved in an activity like the Florida Baptist Children's Home? I mean, a lot of business people might say, well, that's fine, I'd like to do that, but I don't have time.
Right. No, that's true. I mean, a lot of people would say that, but particularly when you're making your career, you ought to be in control of your life, and so I just set my priorities. I always knew that I may be gone during the week, but when I was home on the weekends, I was with my family, because that was my priority. And even though I was gone during the week, doesn't mean that I couldn't be investing time in helping my organization back home. Via conference calls and emails and video conferences and those types of things, I figure out how to make that work. And everybody's life is extremely complicated, and you can let your daily life control you, just like I could let the crises of DCF every day completely control every moment of every day if I let it. But you have to apply a systematic way to manage your life and manage your priorities, and when you do that, you can accomplish a lot of great things.
All right. Speaking of crises, and we talked earlier about management crises. Yeah. You walked into this job, and 2 weeks later, something that was a major crisis occurred, where there had been 2 twins in a foster care situation that had been seriously abused. One died, and here you were 2 weeks into the job. Tell us about, the case has been discussed 100 times, so we don't need to get into the details of that, but tell us what you did and what you learned.
Well, it was something obviously I wasn't prepared for in the early weeks of this new job, but I did realize the magnitude of the problem, And although I knew I wasn't qualified to necessarily solve all the issues, or maybe even didn't really completely even understand how to approach the problem, what I knew I had to do is sort of be in charge of the situation. So, I immediately, flew to Miami. I set up shop in Miami, and I set out to individually understand exactly what happened, step by step, process by process, and not just relying on other people to explain to me what happened, but literally, rolled up my sleeves and figured out, why did these things happen, and how could this happen, and what could be done to avoid something like this ever happening again.
Well, in terms, let's walk through that a little bit. In terms of the foster parents, why didn't, I'm sure you've been asked this 100 times, why didn't someone in the system see what was coming in terms of what these parents were capable of?
Well, those are a lot of the good questions, and it goes to sort of what is the role of DCF and we have case management organizations that exist across the state. What is their role in sort of monitoring the foster care system? And in that example, and quite frankly probably happens in a lot of other places, is when a child is put into foster care, remember the child is still the responsibility of the state, and the state has a responsibility to continue to track the progress of that child, not just that he's getting room and board, but that child is growing and succeeding in their education and in life just like any other child. And that wasn't happening in those cases. I mean, there were lots of signals in that case that things were not right. The children weren't getting their medical and dental exams. They were failing in school. They weren't showing up in school. And those red flags should have been going to a case manager, and a case manager should have been out there dealing with that. And those are exactly some of the changes we're now making in the system today, so that those types of problems, when they do occur, that our investigators and our managers know about that, and that we're engaging with that foster care family.